minute or two? Is it okay? Or you want us to start right on time? Whenever you're ready. Okay. All right. Thank you. I heard that there's like 1 million people online watching at the same time, so. Should we put up can you put the people that are online on just for the beginning? There's a lot of people online, you know. All right. Hi, Maria. Maria, we have you on the screen so everybody can see you.
Yes, I can see myself multiple times.
So it's a very intimate, cozy room, and you're missing out. So. All right, I think we can start. And I wanted Maria to be on the screen because she's supposed to be here, but last minute she couldn't be here. Thanks to everybody that joined us for this session. It's getting close to the end of the World Data Forum, and there's been a lot of interesting sessions and discussions around data and the applications of it. And I think one of the things that's been critical as in the important in the discussion is how do we use data more effectively and information that we have more effectively to drive policy work that we do on the ground. And that requires us to continue to engage and have conversations with people in our country offices. I've been in UNDP New York for the past 3 years, and we tend to talk a lot to each other, thinking that solves all the problems. And when you get into the field, the reality is very different, right? And the issues are very different. And hopefully in this session, you'll hear a little bit more about some of the work that we're doing in Malawi, Bangladesh, with the Green Climate Fund and UNDP and other partners to kind of understand how to use data for development issues and understand the impact on the ground. All right, so I think we can start. Okay, so we have in the room all men panel. It's very un-UN. And yeah, well, Maria is online. She was supposed to be here. So we have our colleagues from Bangladesh and colleagues from Malawi, and I'll introduce them. But I think to start, we're going to have Maria talk a little bit about the work that we do in UNDP on impact evaluation. I think it's important. It's good, Josh, that you're in the room and other colleagues. We're always looking for university partners and people to work with to use that, think through solutions and how to use our data effectively. So, shall we, Maria? Do you want to kick us off?
Yes, definitely. Let me just confirm whether you can hear me well and also see my screen.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So first of all, good afternoon, good morning, and evening for those also connecting remotely. So I'm going to provide a quick overview of UNDP's work on impact evaluations, but first let me take a step back and ask, so why do we evaluate impact? Why do we care about assessing impact? So in essence, we are interested in measuring and expressing with numbers the extent of which a policy or an intervention has affected people's lives. the environment, and so on. So by coupling quality data with rigorous and well-established scientific methods, impact evaluations offer a rationale for redesigning, expanding or discontinuing policies or projects, understanding how much each dollar invested returns a benefit to communities, households, and the environment, and also shifting conventional wisdom or intuition and reorienting interventions towards more effective approaches. So particularly if you think about the SDG context, so policymakers looking to meet their commitments, they need to know if the current policy options that they have available are actually helping them to make progress and to what extent. So well-designed impact evaluations can help policymakers to run a horse race between policy options and allowing them to choose the best way to achieve their goal. UNDP has a widespread presence globally, so scaling up the evidence-based work through impact evaluations could mean expanding the global knowledge by providing public goods on the actual effectiveness of development interventions. So understanding what works, where, and for whom. Our current impact evaluation portfolio contains impact evaluations happening in 13 countries, mainly in Asia and in Africa, such as in Malawi and Bangladesh. So several of these impact evaluations are done as part of the GCF funded projects, in which UNDP is an accredited entity, and they are mainly focused on climate change adaptation. And UNDP SDG integration team offers technical advice to our country offices on the design, field work, analysis, as well as management support and backstopping. And the independent evaluation unit of the GCF is one of our key partners on those impact evaluations. Impact evaluations are normally long-term processes that begin before the start of the project activities or the implementation of the project activities, and they finalize after the end of the project activities. And they generally involve a large number of stakeholders, national, international stakeholders, different ministries, national statistical offices, local private sector, for example, in the form of the survey firms, and also academic partners. So it's a process that involves a lot of cross-learning as well, as jointly with our government counterparts, we as UNDP, we have to identify relevant and existing data sources that will feed or they are required to feed into the impact evaluation process, and also help rethinking about the relevance of available data and how to overcome possible data gaps when addressing national and subnational policy needs. So for more details on our impact evaluation work in UNDP, more information is also available on our data features platform. Thank you. Over back to you, Babatunde.
Thank you, Maria. As Maria was saying, in UNDP, we are present in 170 countries. There's thousands of projects from UNDP. In all of those projects, there's some level of M&E work that is done in those projects. And in the past few years, we've been trying to see how we can invest in more rigorous impact evaluation work, applying randomized control trials and the difference and the rest. And a key partner for us in that work is the Green Climate Fund, the Independent Evaluation Office. Was it 2015 that we had a workshop in Bangkok? I'm trying to remember now. 2018. So in 2018 was the first time we all came together to say with the different investment that we have in UNDP with GCF, let's figure out how to measure the impact. And that's the Green Climate Fund has the LOTA program, which we'll talk about in a minute, and I invite Mr. Susumu Yoshida from the Green Climate Fund to talk through that.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Susumu Yoshida. I'm an evaluation specialist at the Independent Evaluation Unit of the Green Climate Fund. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to the panel today, and thank you for joining. So today, I'm going to talk very, very briefly about the program that I manage at in my unit called the LOTA. But for those who are not familiar with the Green Climate Fund, it's the largest climate fund with a portfolio of 12 billion US dollars, leveraging 45 billion US dollars. So we finance climate mitigation and adaptation project in developing countries. So basically what this LOTA program does is we do impact assessment of GCF-funded activities. Okay. So LOTA means learning-oriented real-time impact assessment. So we operate under 3 pillars: the learning-oriented, and it's real-time, and we try to collect the real-time data, and of course we do impact assessment of the project. This is our vision. It's a little bit mouthful, but so we LOTA generate evidence to promote the paradigm shift towards the low emission and climate resilient development pathways by enhancing a culture of evidence-based decision making through rigorous impact assessment. How we do this? So first, we do capacity building of GCF accredited entities to conduct and also manage impact assessment. And of course, like the assessment, we inform the GCF Secretariat and the board about the GCF investment, what works, what doesn't, if it works, to what extent. And then the evidence and then the learning that we find is not only for GCF internal use, but for the wider communities. So we try to fill the knowledge gap, and because this is global public goods. So LOTA has various phases, and we support the whole project cycle from the design of the evaluation through the implementation, collecting data, analysis, and then we aim to do the academic publications. So as you can see, we have a lot of evaluations of projects still at the very beginning of the process, but today we are going to hear from the 2 most advanced evaluations, which are Malawi and Bangladesh. So we can hear from them. This is really a brief introduction, but if you have any questions or any interest, please try to catch me later or send us any email. Thank you.
Should we be formal, informal? Yeah, I think this is, thanks for that, and for the colleagues that just joined. This is a session that we're organizing with our colleagues in the Green Climate Fund, the Independent Evaluation Office. And I've been in some of those sessions earlier where there's conversation around climate finance and what we're doing on the ground and all of that. And from the UNDP is one of the highest organization that funds from Green Climate Fund. It's like $1 billion now, right? Thereabouts to the government globally. So it's a huge portfolio of investments on the ground to support climate adaptation and climate mitigation. All right, so now we're gonna go and hear from the colleagues from the field. I would like to invite, okay, so I need to read this. Geoffrey. It's a Geoffrey Chilombo from the Agricultural Communications Officer in the Ministry of Agriculture in Malawi. If you can join us here. Mr. Ted also. Ted works for UNDP as a knowledge management and M&E specialist. And also Mohammed from our M&E in the Bangladesh office. So I was making a joke earlier that this is very unlike a UN with all men on the panel, but it's Maria that is on the screen couldn't make it, and a couple of other colleagues. But I'm very glad that you're here. So just to give a quick, I know we had that screen earlier from Susumu. Typically when there's a part of designing the projects and having the projects managed by the government. And then there's the process of trying to understand in real time and working with the government to understand the impact and the value of those projects to different development outcomes, right? So these are not just climate finance projects, they're projects that is supposed to help farmers with vulnerability, helps with poverty, help understand resilience of communities to water issues, and we'll hear from colleagues about that today. So to start with, I'll ask Geoffrey the Malawi experience. Over to you.
Thank you, moderator. As you have heard from Green Climate Fund, in terms of Malawi, in terms of impact evaluation, we had our own report in 2022, and the report reviewed a lot of areas which the government has acted upon. In terms of the impact evaluation which we had, it was a thorough one. You must note that as the government, we have had evaluation exercises before in terms of the projects and the programs which we are implementing. But this one was kind of different from what we have had, because the previous evaluations which we have had, it was more of assessing the whole project in terms of the targets. If we have made the targets, for example, if we are targeting about 100 farmers, have we made, or have we overachieved or underachieved? Apart from that, in terms of the outcomes, have we managed to come up with those objectives as well as outcomes? But when it came to this impact evaluation, it was more of having the baseline survey at first before the starting or the inception of the project. Apart from that, in the middle, we had the impact evaluation in terms of the concentrating on an intervention, which was the main intervention in the project. So as government, we were implementing a project with UNDP, funded by Green Climate Fund, which is the upscaling use of climate information and the early warning systems. And the project started in 2018. Of course, initially it was supposed to start in 2017, but we started in 2018, and it will be ending this 2023 December. So the impact evaluation mainly focused on one approach which we were using, which is participatory integrated climate services for agriculture. So this approach aims at empowering farmers to make decisions in terms of the farming decisions pertaining to their daily farming activities by looking at the climate of their area as well as weather. So the impact evaluation mainly focuses on assessing how successful the approach is to farmers. So for 2 years, starting from 2019, where we had the baseline survey, and in 2021, 2022, where we ended the exercise, it showed that the approach had an impact, because the impact evaluation also revealed that those farmers who were exposed to PICS approach, their yield, they had an increase in yield in about 60%. So as a government, we saw that the approach was something which was useful to farmers because for your information, in Malawi, about 85% of farmers are small-scale farmers who have land holding size of not more than 1 acre. So these farmers, we are targeting them to have food security, as well as to make sure that in terms of poverty levels, we should reduce the poverty level. So the increase in yield as well also shows that the approach was something which farmers can adopt and try to implement and make sure that they are able to increase their yield and have food security, and in the consequence, making sure that the food security which is there should also lead to poverty alleviation. So because of that, the government saw that in terms of this approach where farmers were targeted with the agricultural advisories which are related to climate and weather, farmers were able to implement activities to come up with good initiatives to make sure that they are able to adapt to climate change, as well as be prepared to the eventualities which are there for climate changes. So government adopted the report and made sure that we should realign some of our activities in terms of agriculture extension and advisory services. For example, in terms of mainstreaming climate and weather information in our agricultural extension and advisory services. That's what we did at first. Apart from that, when the report was being released, we were also in the course of reviewing our national agriculture extension and advisory service strategy. So in our national agriculture extension and advisory service, we also we had a priority in area number 6 of climate and environment, where PICS as an approach has been targeted that by 2025, about 1 million households should be trained in PICS approach out of the 3.5 million households which we have in Malawi. So that's another area which the government has started in terms of realigning our policies and strategy. And currently, we're also in the process of reviewing our national agriculture policy. And in that national agriculture policy, we're also emphasizing the mainstreaming of weather and climate information. So all this is coming from the data which we got from the impact evaluation which Green Climate Fund, UNDP, did in our country. Apart from that, we have also started engage the academia, so that our extension workers, which most of the time are trained by the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, should be able to be trained while they are in the college about the approach and the other approaches which are mainly focusing on mainstreaming climate and weather information. So these are some of the areas which the government has done after assessing the data which the impact evaluation had. So I'll stop from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ted, do you have anything to add?
Nothing much to add. Geoff has pretty much covered most of the things. But just to highlight our lessons from the impact evaluation process, I think for Malawi, we succeeded. I wouldn't say perfectly, but in a good way, because from the very beginning, we ensured that there is a good collaboration with the government. Because as you know, this impact evaluation approach is quite academic. You're looking at, econometric modeling, sampling approaches, which were deemed at first to be like, what is the purpose of this? But through the process of communicating with the implementing partners like Ministry of Agriculture, we noted that this was an important process because the people already understood the theory of change of the project, the whole project, but also the importance of the process. So with their buy-in, we found it easy to implement the process because, as Geoffrey has said, we first did the baseline and an end line in the middle of the project implementation. And for that reason, it's like we ensured that we have already managed the outcomes and the results of the project. So the collaboration from the beginning was very key because traditionally, most of the impact evaluations usually happen after the project has been implemented. The other highlight is that the engagement brought a lot of capacity building, not only to UNDP, but also the implementing partners, because the project is working with about 5 government departments apart from the Ministry of Agriculture. So the issues of capacity at locations like developing countries like Malawi are very key, because there are a lot of projects that are being implemented to tackle effects of climate change, but most of those do not mainstream impact evaluation in the project, and sometimes it becomes hard to measure the impact of such interventions. So with the LOTA program, we saw that it really brought additional knowledge to the country office, UNDP country office, but also the government. As a lesson learned, another lesson learned would be that in future, it would be good to start the process early, preferably at the inception point when you are introducing the project, so that as you move forward, everybody should understand why you need this impact evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. So I won't do the recap on the Malawi yet. Let's hear from Bangladesh. Mr. Mohammed Hussein is our project coordinator specialist, and he's also sits in the Ministry of Public Administration in Bangladesh. And he's going to talk a little bit about the experience in Bangladesh. If you can also share a little bit about the project itself, because these 2 projects are very interesting. I know we're not going into details into the project, but it's, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Particularly, this is a very interesting project that DCF is implementing in Bangladesh. And this is, in fact, a project that really looks after the adaptive livelihood capacities building for the coastal people who are very vulnerable to climate change in 2 of the districts in coastal area of southern Bangladesh. So we have 2 ministries. We have the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, and we also have the local government ministry, the Department of Public Health Engineering Department. They are really implementing this particular project being financed from Green Climate Fund and with the technical support of UNDP. I'm very fortunate. I'm in fact a government civil servant and now working at UNDP under a secondment and looking after this particular project. So I have the opportunity to work particularly with this project from the government side, from the policy aspect, and as well as now have the opportunity to looking after this particular project from the implementation side. So this particular project has 3 basic components. One is the livelihood supports that are being provided to make them adaptive to the climate change challenges. The second one is supply of pure drinking water, basically the rainwater harvesting system. And third component is the capacity building and kind of things. So about the LOTA, we really got engaged in 2019, and the inception or the baseline survey was being done in September 2020. This particular project was really scheduled to be started on 2019, but due to the COVID-19, and we also had a bad impact of the cyclone Amphan and government complexities, it really was delayed a little bit. So anyway, on September 2020, the baseline survey really looked after, and then fortunately during that time, we also had the baseline survey for the particular project. So the impact evaluation really used the profile data that the project was really generating. And then as like Malawi, this kind of intervention, the impact evaluation really created a very good interest in the field and have that kind of ownership and understanding among the beneficiaries as well as the other stakeholders to know about this particular project and what this is really going to be. We had the implementing ministries to be involved during that process, and then their feedback was also really taken taken into consideration about the baseline survey. The baseline survey has its report being published, and it really looks after the basic scenario, the socioeconomic scenarios of these particular beneficiaries of the particular project. We also have the inline survey done, being in 2022, late 2022. Now the data are being really looking into, and we hope that the inline survey report will be published very soon. The process is that we also, in the country, we have the big NGO like BRAC and ICDDR. We really had this kind of experience of working with this LOTA type of impact evaluation, particularly in the health or agricultural project. But this is the very first time we have this kind of impact evaluation, particularly a project looking after the socio-economic benefit and looking after the climate change. So this is a very new experience for us, and we are really looking forward to the end report. As far as the policy reform or the policy formulation is concerned, as you know, that government really look after the evidences. And then we hope that after their end report, we'll be able to really get engaged with our planning ministry, particularly the statistical department, as well as the government's own project implementation monitoring unit, to make it as a regular exercise for that. So in that case, we will need a very good policy advocacy or this data advocacy really to get the system in place. We also had the very good conversation or the policy advocacy at this very moment with particular ministries, the implementing ministry, and we hope that with the help of GCF as well as UNDP, we'll be able to make it forward to the government level, that means the policy level. So this is more or less all about the progress that in place, and then we really look forward to have a good end up of this particular LOTA, and then looking forward to the end report to be in place. That's more or less in a nutshell about the LOTA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to give a little bit of context in terms of, I know, Susumu, you put earlier the process of carrying out this impact evaluation and working with the government. So typically, there's the first part where we need to design interventions to support the government in terms of impacts of climate change, right? So in Malawi back then, when we designed the project, it was when there was a major flooding in Malawi. And also there's impact on farmers from climate change. And the government they were trying to understand solutions that can help reduce that vulnerability. And part of the solutions then was support to fishers and then also support to farmers in, I think it's about 14 districts in Malawi. And as part of that, especially on climate change impact, we're thinking of solutions that can help farmers to adapt effectively, right? There's the traditional methods of doing it through extension services, and we all know that it's not as effective in many developing countries here to apply extension services to those. And we were exploring an innovative approach, which is a PIXA approach. And there's been no impact evaluation to support if it works or not, or if it's a sustainable approach. And that's what was done in Malawi to do that. And similar in Bangladesh, it's a similar process of understanding the impact, understanding solutions that needs to be put in place, and information that can help us here to measure if this is a good approach or not. I'll hand over to you, Sumu, in terms of the LOTA process so far, lessons, what you can share. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I was asked to share some challenges, like a lot of challenges, like what kind of challenges that we face or we experience through this process and the lessons learned. And I was thinking like what I can say, not only the GCF context, but something applicable to other settings that this audience may also face. So I picked 3 areas. The first one is level of the partnership or extent of partnership. And then the second is quality of data. And then the last one is capacity building effort. So the partnership, in the other session throughout this week, I hear a lot of like partnership, collaboration, the importance of a partnership and then the collaboration. So of course, it's very important, but I'm not saying that UNDP is a difficult partner to work with, but are we operating at the optimal level of a partnership? As you can imagine, the way how we work at the GCF, we don't implement project. We work with partners. So we have so many layers of like stakeholders involved, like not only UNDP, but the local government and then the local office in the countries. So it adds a lot of bureaucracies, and then it causes a lot, it takes a lot of time to get things done as well. And sometimes we don't know what is the issues, that why it's stopping, and how we can move things forward. And like quick example, that I had a call yesterday for other project and LOTA project. And so we have, of course, country office, and then the headquarters, a country office in Latin America, and then their headquarters in Europe. We have academic partners also in Europe. We just try to come up with one common time to have a call, which was like a disaster. So yeah, of course, like the partnership is very important because we can bring different expertise, and then sometimes we can fill the financial gap. But we really, that's also a challenge when we implement this kind of exercise, the partnership. And the second point is quality of data. So like this, again, this kind of exercise, the data is everything, right? So without a good data, we cannot do a robust analysis or anything like we cannot conclude. So that's a key. But we don't know like how much we are putting effort to secure the quality that we need. Sometimes it's too late. I think in other sessions that I was in yesterday, somebody asked, so what can we do after the data collection if the quality is bad? Like, can we do something? I think there's a very limited thing that we can do if the data collection has been done. So through LOTA, we try to not to make it happen. That's why we start very beginning. So our support doesn't start from the data collection or data analysis stage, but very beginning, like the design stage, what kind of data we need to collect, and what kind of data are available from the project side, and how we can harmonize our effort. And we also review even the TOR for the survey farm, and make sure that the procurement goes well. And then we support the data collection training, or like enumerator training to do the data collection. We do high frequency checks, and then we do the quality assurance, so that we avoid the worst case scenario where we have the bad data after all the effort that we put. I think the technology really helped to do some kind of like quality checks, right? Like traditionally, like the paper-based surveys, we didn't even know where the enumerators are going and collecting data and how they are filling the data. With the new technology like the CAPI, we know we can track and how much they are spending time, and then they are at least doing a good job, or like they are doing the things that they have to do. But at the same time, of course, I think those who have worked on surveys, I think we all experienced that we put the wrong skip patterns and that we missed the whole sections, and then that's kind of like a loss. So we also make sure that we check all the logics, all the patterns, to make sure that we avoid these issues. And then the last part is the capacity, how we do this. As I said, LOTA, we engage from very beginning, from as early as possible. And we support the whole project cycle, right? So from the inception through the completion. The project cycle is like 5 to, 10 years of the process. And it's very common, the change of the project staff change, the change of the government staff change, even the change of the government change, and the priority changes. every single time we have to do capacity building, because this is quite also politically sensitive, right? Like how to give the intervention to beneficiaries, how we do select randomization, like how can I, explain to the government ministers or like the government officials. So that's why like we do capacity building every single time. We cannot stop changing the change of the stuff, but I think this process, we really need a buy-in from the key stakeholders. So that's why this kind of like capacity building is very important, but it's also sometimes it can be a bottleneck. So I think the kind of like solution is like we really have to do this, build a culture of evidence so that everybody understands the importance of this kind of exercise, and then how we can use this kind of study or evaluation that we are doing. Yeah, I stop here.
Thank you. I think I'll go to Bangladesh instead of Malawi. If you can share challenges and lessons, and then, yeah.
Okay, thank you. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, I would summarize in 3 points, particularly. The first one is, in our case, in this particular project, we have 3 components, but the lottery really looked after just one. So this is a very partial in that sense, and livelihood, for livelihood component only, that really missed the water component. Although this basic project idea was that saving the time for the water component, then investing that time into livelihoods. So it need to be some sorts of shadow pricing for the water component to be make it to a very full or particularly comprehensive impact evaluation. In that sense, it really looks after a very short and a very long, short-term, not a medium or long-term impact in that sense. Secondly, is that due to the COVID-19, the Amphan and the other problems that I mentioned earlier, we had a very delayed start, and it actually looks after only 3 to 6 months results from the livelihood, which is too short, particularly to have a good or meaningful interventions or meaningful interpretations as far as livelihood is concerned. It really need a longer version. In that sense, I think that a follow-up study from the DCF as well as from the government or the project part need to be really followed it up. Otherwise, it will have not a very good result at the end. Third thing is that partnership, what Susumu was really telling. Unfortunately, the implementing ministries, in our case, the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs and the local government were really involved with the LOTA process from the very beginning, but our Ministry of Planning, the statistical department or the project impact evaluations and the monitoring department, they were unfortunately missing. So now we are really trying to really get it back to them and really make them oriented as well as through our trainings and make them some capacity building kind of things. But if it were really involved from the very beginning, then I think that the kind of advocacy we really need to do at this end might not be that much higher. That would be very eased up. So more or less the 3 points from Bangladesh. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And Geoffrey, you talked earlier about this work feeding into national agricultural policies, into policies around extension services in the country. Very excited to hear that. And if you can just share a little bit about the lessons in that process, because it's transitioning from, I can't remember what year we had the initial impact evaluation workshop in Malawi and discussion around PICSA and taking that into the policy side.
Thank you. In terms of the experience and of having this impact evaluation, after the report was released, we made sure that the report should be presented to the executive our director of agriculture extension services who took the report and presented to the ministry, to the secretary for agriculture. So it was more of a discussion in terms of how can we make sure that the agriculture extension and advisory services should move in terms of climate and climate change. So it was something which agriculture extension, although the issues of climate and the weather information was there, but it was not targeted. So what will happen is that when we have seasonal forecast, it was just a seasonal forecast which our extension workers will be disseminating to farmers. That this season, this is what we're expecting. But in terms of the advisories on what farmers should do with that information, that was the part which was missing. So the data which came with this impact evaluation revealed that if a farmer is given a focus with an advisory on what to do with that focus, a farmer will be able to take that message and adhere to that message. So the impact evaluation helped the ministry to make sure that we should relook our advisories which we send to farmers, because before there were just general advisories in terms of how we can grow this crop and which crop can do well in these areas. But the impact evaluation also revealed that apart from a crop being favorable to a certain area, but it can also be affected by the season which will be in that particular year in terms of how rain falls. So, for example, a crop can be favorable to a district, but you find out that in a certain year, that crop cannot do well because of what the district has received in terms of rainfall. So those are some of the areas which made the ministry to start thinking about what advisories are we sending to farmers. So because of that, we even came up with some of the strategies in terms of the media which we use. Apart from using these agriculture extension officers, the report also, the data also revealed that there are a lot of farmers who get the messages through the radio as well as their peers. So the ministry also started advocating in terms of having the radio programs, in terms of sending the advisories to farmers. Even we came up with messages, SMSs, because during this implementation of this project, there was a component where we could send messages to farmers in terms of how the weather will be like for a week and what kind of activities a farmer can do. So those are some of the areas which the ministry was interested in, and start to adopt in terms of how we can make sure that the extension should not start to the old way of only relying on an extension officer and the general messages, but make sure that even these advisories which are in line with climate as well as weather should be there, and other media which we can use in order to send messages to farmers. So those are some of the areas which the government, of course, has started to adopt because of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I'd like to open the floor for questions. I don't know, I know there are some colleagues online, but yes, Josh.
Thank you. My name is Josh Morfeld. I am a professor, probably obvious from my outfit, at the KDI school, which is a government-run policy school in South Korea. I heard multiple of you mention how difficult it was to try to convince people about the importance of evaluating these things. I'm just curious if you could go into a little bit more detail about what made it so difficult. Like what seems to be the key challenges you face when you're trying to convince government officials, for example, to, for example, spend extra money to make sure you evaluate things properly?
Any other questions? Maybe let's answer that first.
Okay, thank you for the question. As far as the evaluation is concerned, particularly LOTA, as it is a real time and there is that means some of the portion of the project activities is being reserved. And that means as far as the Bangladesh project is concerned, 1/3 of the total beneficiaries were really delayed near about one year about the project implementation. This is the very tricky time because they are the neighbors. 1/3 of the beneficiaries are being deprived or kept awaiting rather than that's the project implementation. So make them understood. They always ask why we are those our neighbors are being really started their project implementation, why we are kept depriving or why we are not as depriving, it's a waiting. So this is a very tricky things to make them really understand or this kind of challenge, the first thing. The second thing is that there are so many projects really running in the locality. So it's always a very hard, particularly if you really keep this particular project awaiting for those case or the control that the area that we call. But there are so many other projects really running. So this is another challenge. They really keep motivating to going into other sorts of projects as the beneficiaries. And this is another challenge for the government institutions as well. As Susumu was really telling that they have the political or that kind of motivation. So they always really want the project implemented from the day one. So they don't, because there are lots of motivations and they have that time pressure. So those are the three things I think very, very crucial as far as the beneficiaries are concerned, and the impact evaluation, what this lot are really looking after was a bit challenging, really. Thank you.
Okay, no, exactly what the experience from Bangladesh is pretty much the same like in Malawi. We had similar challenges. But just to add that, as it was presented, this process of LOTA starts from the beginning. And yeah, the waiting is always there on the part of beneficiaries, but also the implementers. Like I highlighted that the traditional approach to impact evaluation has, in many cases, been it should be conducted after the project. So you're bringing in this program from the beginning. It was kind of business unusual. So it was like a process that you are starting with teaching people things that they haven't been waiting for. They are looking for the start of the project, but you are telling them, no, this is how you're supposed to target the beneficiaries. And they are not used to that. So yeah, the acceptance was not there from the beginning, and we needed the time and the consultations to be done. So that's why we highlighted it to say it was kind of difficult because everybody had been waiting for the project implementation for like over a year. So that as well might have been one of the things that made them to be kind of resistant. But eventually, after they saw the full process, it's when now they appreciate it to say, yeah, this is the best way to proceed with projects, because for you to demonstrate impact within that short period of time, it's unheard of. It's not common, but it was possible with this experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add a few points, I think your question is like, what does like the hurdles, like to barriers to take part in this kind of evaluations. I think I can separate two things. One is like the institutional, like international organization part, and also the government part. The international, like the institution aspect. So I think we don't have a proper incentives for the project teams to take. So they see it as an extra burden, like extra effort to do. So this is like the voluntary process. So we don't pre-select. The institution don't ask the team to include this exercise, right? So it's up to the team if they do it or not. And since they don't have a proper understanding of the value it can bring to the project, or like they don't understand what it really means in terms of the project implementation, how it can support or help the project. So that's the challenge. So what I always say, like try to say that we are not trying to be a burden to the project teams, but we try to support and help as much as possible, because all the projects have to do monitoring and evaluation, and then the like midterm evaluation, and then the final evaluation and the report, right? So we try to synchronize the effort so that we don't duplicate the effort and try to take advantage of the that both activities. So that's from the institutional aspect. And the government side, as I also touched a little bit, but in my experience, so when I try to suggest RCT, randomization, the director of the agency, implementing agency, told me like, are you crazy? Like, how can I explain to my constituency that you are not beneficiary because you are out with a lottery, right? You are not selected as a lottery. So I said, like, yeah, exactly. That's why you have to do it, because you can blame us and you can forget all the political like the aspect and you know, but he said like, no, it's very difficult to do it. But in the end, he's convinced and he did it. And now he's a strong supporter of the randomizations, because I said like it's the important thing is like the process, make the application process transparent, and then make it open to the public, and then so that you are not doing giving favorism or doing something for your interest. So I think that's to.
All right. Now just to quickly add to that, I think it's a process of translating the impact evaluation theory that we economists are very familiar with to a policymaker that is trying to provide resources for the communities, right? And in some of the things in the impact evaluation methodology, like randomization, collecting data and all of that, it's done in different ways, right? And they're, like in Zambia, for instance, we have a similar work we're doing in Zambia. The local communities in Zambia, they do some kind of randomization at the local level to get like goat rearing and the rest, right? But if you come and say do RCT, they're like, what RCT? I cannot randomize. But then you listen to them and they're like, oh, you're doing randomization already in some way, right? So I think it's translating all of that, and that's where, for all of this work, we start with a conversation with the government, 2-3 days or a week, theoretical understanding what they do and going through that process, and over time, be able to get to where we are changing policies. Any other last question?
Can I clarify a little bit here? Sure. So we are not the method driven. We are not try to do randomization or like, so we are like problem driven, like what kind of problem that we are going to answer, or like what kind of knowledge that we are going to generate. And we are trying to offer the best approach in the context that we are evaluating.
All right. Any other question from colleagues? Thank you very much. Any last sentence word?
I think this is a very good approach at the end when people really, the challenges are there, but this is a very good approach, particularly redesigning the government delivery service. Because for years, government is always really not accustomed to this kind of approach. So I think it's a kind of eye-opener for them. And at the end of the day, when citizens really can understand the beneficiaries, this is a very good way of doing the things in another way or on alternative way. So at the end of the day, making them understood and keeping the process going, I think the end result is good.
Yeah, I think I would like to agree with what he has said. It's something which it has been lacking in our ministry in terms of making sure that we should be acting on the informed point. But with the coming of this impact evaluation, there are other projects as well who are starting to emulate in terms of how they can assess the impact of the initiatives which are within the project. So it's a good approach, initiative as well. and the data which comes out made it possible for policymakers to make sure that they are able to be convinced in terms of how to implement something. Thank you.
Thank you. You good?
Yeah, thank you
10
very much.
seconds.
And so we work with partners, right? So we are always looking for like academia and then the other implementing partner to work with. So please get in touch with us. I repeat, UNDP is not the difficult partner to work with. But so we have many ongoing projects. So we look forward to the more collaboration and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's partnership is very important for this work. I didn't touch earlier that question on why some of this is difficult. It's also, you have a donor and you have governments and you have implementing agencies and, what are you evaluating? Why are you trying to look at my delivery, right? You have all of that happening at the same time, which also makes the dynamic interesting. But there's a lot that we don't know about climate change adaptations and what works and what doesn't work. And that's why work like this is important. So also to thin those out and understand the impact that it has, positive or negative, on households, on communities, and their way to their resilience to climate change impact. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks.